I was asked to present the science of happiness to my daughter's Girl Scout troop, and basically plagiarized this from the internet. This PowerPoint template theme is literally called badge, and I thought that was appropriate for the girls about to get their science of happiness badge. And I thanked the scout leaders for giving me the opportunity to do this. Since I'm a professor and give lectures frequently, I told them they could thank their troop leader for stopping me from making this completely boring, and I thanked my daughter also, and her mommy as well. So throughout the presentation, and now I'm going to basically read what I said to them. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to reference the badge requirements and also snippets from there. According to the troop leader, as long as I cover them, we don't have to do it exactly the same way. Of the requirements, I'm really into the first three, which are to make yourself happier, think differently for happiness, and get happy through others. So I used the first three to accomplish the last two, which I found to be meh. And those were to do a happiness experiment and create a happiness action plan. So let's start with what the badge folks think are the three keys to happiness. So let's read this together. The three keys to happiness. Scientists have found that the three things that make people most happy are pleasure, engagement, and meaning. While most people spend their time trying to have pleasurable experiences, experiments show that pleasure is the least likely of these three to bring true joy. So they use the word pleasure. And so I said, let's start by listening to Dr. Robert Lustig explain the confusion between the words pleasure and happiness. And I don't think it's appropriate for me to play the whole YouTube video here, but he talks about how pleasure is, ephemeral. It's not, it doesn't last very long. And I think in the next slide I talk about that.
Actually, I wrote this book because we I believe there are seven. Pleasure is
So he talks about
short-lived,
how
happiness is long-lived.
pleasure is short-lived versus happiness, which is long-lived. Pleasure is visceral, while happiness is ethereal. Pleasure is about taking, while happiness is giving. We can get pleasure through substances, but we can't get happiness from them. Pleasure usually occurs when you're alone versus happiness, which tends to occur with social groups. Pleasure is about extremes, and it leads to addiction versus happiness, which you can't really get addicted to happiness. And he also talks about how pleasure is associated with the neurotransmitter dopamine, which excites the brain when it binds, and the brain will downregulate if there's too much excitement or stimulation. And you start to get tolerance, and it takes a bigger hit to get the same result. Whereas serotonin, it's actually inhibitory when it binds. It calms the neuron, and so it provides contentment, while dopamine will downregulate serotonin. So happiness is serotonin, and pleasure is dopamine. And he was talking about how, you can get that hit of dopamine from gambling and, screens and shopping. Power and politics stimulates all of this, but none of this can really create happiness. In fact, all of this has made us unhappy over the years. And then here he starts talking about what he calls the 4 C's, which is to connect, and you can connect through religion. Social media, however, will cause dopamine rises rather than serotonin. The next C is contributing, which takes you outside of yourself. Things like volunteering, making your friends' lives easier. Coping, and that includes improving sleep, mindfulness, Multitasking actually does not create contentment or help reduce stress. It actually makes you more stressful. Exercise can help too. And then he talks about C. The last C is cooking, and it means he wants you to cook with tryptophan and omega-3 fatty acids, which will help increase serotonin levels. So what about a pleasure versus happiness exercise? So basically, we had them do an activity, share with each other, and then they ate something sweet, which was the pleasure part. So if we look at this now, we can see that pleasure is probably not the right word for this. I do agree with engagement and meaning, and we'll go through these in more detail later. So for the first step of the badge, they ask, what would make you happiest? You already understand that money, food, substances, these are all going to cause pleasure. They recommend getting into a flow state, counting your blessings, or appreciating what you have throughout the day. I agree with these. So let's start with flow. No pain, no gain is a myth. We're happiest doing things where we enjoy the process, not just the results. When our skills and challenges are balanced, we become immersed in what we're doing, and that's a flow state. How can you figure out what would put you in a flow state? Well, ask, what would you do if no one would judge you? This question can point you in the right direction. What kind of things get you guys into a flow state? Many of you already know that I like music. When I'm playing and not thinking too hard about what I'm playing, I get into a flow state. The only thing that we can't replace is the time we have on this planet. So you have to treat that as if it's the most important thing you own. Would you waste your hard-earned money on frivolous things? No. Then why do we do that with our time, which is far more valuable? Take the time to write down all of the things you do in a day and decide which of them feels meaningful and which are frivolous. And that's how you're going to decide what will get you into a flow state. So the Scout Manual recommends thinking about your signature strengths, which I've included here. There's this book I read where they said it's not enough to just be happy now. You have to have a vision for the future, a purpose, and meaning. If you only have a purpose and your happiness depends on its successful outcome, one second, just trying to get the pointer here. Okay. Yes, so if you only have a purpose and your happiness depends on its successful outcome, then you'll just be stressed out all the time, right here in this quadrant here. This is the kid who is only thinking about getting into a good college and not actually enjoying learning the content. You also can't just be happy without having purpose. And the purpose that's pulling you forward. Otherwise, your happiness will pretty much be fleeting. But when you have both, he says, you'll be in an eternal flow state where it feels like you're bending reality. Your Scout Manual says the same thing. You get happiness by feeling good now and working towards something. To find the perfect career, it should be pleasurable to do and have a purpose you believe in. And it lets you do things you're good at. We also want to improve and get better. That's part of our nature. If we think about our strengths, about what we're good at, where our talents reside, and then find the overlap between those and what makes us happy, that's the ideal scenario. Keep in mind that it's all about your feelings, not what someone else thinks. Research shows hospital janitors found their jobs meaningful when they saw themselves as contributing to sick people getting better, not as a bunch of menial tasks. As a doctor, I feel really good about what I do, and I feel like it's full of meaning. And I now feel like I'm good at it, even though I'm constantly improving. It's easy to say I want to give my life meaning, but I think it's harder to actually do. Let's pretend we took a time machine to the future, and it's your funeral. After a long life, the end has come. What do you want the people who love you to be saying about you? About what you accomplished? About the difference you made in their lives? I told them to write down some of these things on the back of a piece of paper I gave them. Got a few thoughts? Congratulations. You now have long-term goals. Work backwards and make those things happen. When your vision of your life story isn't clicking, you can end up depressed. But you can change the story you tell yourself about your life and correct this. Depression frequently stems from an incoherent story, an inadequate narrative account of oneself, or a life story gone awry. Psychotherapists actually help people rewrite their stories, and this process is as, if not more, effective than medication. So you can change your story midlife. Stories give guidance when times are hard. Christians have this statement, what would Jesus do? And that's when they can step outside themselves and decide how to deal with things with less confusion. What if the new story of your life sounds fake? Maybe your new story doesn't ring true. Don't worry, you can make it true. Starting now, go and be the story you tell yourself. The do good, be good method. Our attitudes and beliefs often follow from our behaviors rather than the opposite. The author Kurt Vonnegut famously wrote, "We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be." People who do volunteer work, for example, often change their narratives of who they are, coming to view themselves as caring, helpful people if they didn't before. So think of a story, a narrative, movie, or make-believe life that you want to live and be. The science says that is who you will become. Now that we've covered flow, let's cover the other two. I think these can be best addressed with learning mindfulness and learning journaling. How many of you think you know what mindfulness is? So this is a description that I think is really appropriate for their age group, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to play here. It's a tween targeted description of mindfulness. And I'm going to move forward. So mindfulness is a great way to get out of your negative thoughts. For me, I've found it's best to replace my bad thoughts. So first of all, I recognize the internal dialogue I'm having, and I change the dialogue to gratitude about that thing. So I'm using this picture here of Kavina and her mom, and when her mom is rightfully angry at Kavina for being bad or something, doing something bad, I tell her, look, feel grateful that you're experiencing this, because she's not going to stay this age forever. You're not going to have these moments forever. So that's taking the bad thought and replacing it with gratitude about that thing. And that seems to work great for me. Another version of this is to substitute one behavior for another. For example, I love going to KFC or White Castle or all of these places that are bad for my guy my age to be eating at. So I have a bowl of nuts sitting in my car, and I reach for those, and that replaces the action, the behavior of going into the drive-thru. So this is my father, Kavina's grandfather, and he had a way of dealing with bad thoughts. Kavina's grandparents are both psychiatrists. Her granddad wrote a book called Metaphors for Healing, where he gave 2 other ways of dealing with bad thoughts. One was called Delete Your Junk Mail, and I'm going to read that for you here. So you get all kind of emails. Some are joyful, informative, and essential. Others are obscene, hostile, and contain a virus. If you're naive, you open all of them. The opened virus emails infect and disable your computer. If you're computer savvy, you won't open them. You simply delete them. Our mind is like our email inbox too. It gets all kinds of thoughts. Some are problems, some are solutions or joyful. Others are nasty, evil, and unwanted. If you attend to these evil thoughts, you become unhappy, scared, and guilty. And you wonder what kind of evil person you are. Think of these thoughts the way you think of spam. Don't open them, just delete them. The important thing is what you do with your thoughts. You have no control over getting those thoughts in your mind. The only thing you have control of is how much attention and time you spend on them. He had another one called Antidote Thoughts. If someone overdoses on heroin, they can often be revived with a Narcan injection as an antidote. Every time Joe went away for a business trip, Rita, his wife, would go crazy. She worried about an air disaster by a terrorist bomb. She could not eat or sleep while he was away. She knew her worries were irrational, but she couldn't control her thoughts. She asked Joe to change jobs. Poisonous thoughts also have antidote thoughts. Rita decided to use antidote thoughts for her fears. She repeatedly told herself, he has 1 in 5,000 chances of dying in his car on the highway, but he has 1 in 11 million chances of dying in an air disaster. Why am I worrying when he's so much safer in the air? By repeatedly giving herself antidote thoughts, she was able to calm herself down, and it eventually went away. So we did a little exercise where we went through all these questions that we thought would be relevant to the Girl Scouts, and think of options. Would you replace it? Would you delete it? Would you use an antidote thought? And they were surprisingly mature in their answers. So journaling is another way to deal with your thoughts. Sounds like a drag, so let's scientifically prove that it's worth it. Well, it improves your thinking and your grades. We found that experience doesn't teach as well as reflecting on that experience, so you get more out of your life experiences. Journaling helps recovery from both physical and psychological stress. It will make you become a better thinker because writing requires observation, reflection, analysis, and an artful presentation of information. It makes you happier because you think more about the positives than the negatives. It gives you more restful sleep because it kind of unclutters your mind. As Tim Ferriss has said of his daily journaling habit, I don't journal to be productive. I don't do it to find great ideas or to put down prose I can later publish. The pages aren't intended for anyone but me. I'm just caging my monkey mind on paper so I can get on with my effing day. Yes, that is what journaling is about. Instead of carrying that baggage around in your heads or hearts, we put it down on paper. It's spiritual windshield wipers. Taking something you were angry about to your journal will keep you from doing something stupid, something you would have regretted. Abraham Lincoln called them hot letters. Whenever he felt a pang of anger towards someone, he would grab a pen and a blank piece of paper and spill his pent-up rage onto the page. Then he'd write, "Never sent, never signed." Journaling will also help you work through your issues. You may have heard of the Diary of Anne Frank. She wrote, "I hope you'll be a great source of comfort and support." And it was during a time when her people, the Jewish religion, were being ritualistically collected and killed. Can you imagine being like Anne and her Jewish family were forced into hiding in the cramped attic annex over her father's warehouse in Amsterdam? It's where they would spend the next 2 years. According to Anne Frank's father, Otto, Anne didn't write in her journal every day. She wrote when she was upset or dealing with a problem. She wrote when she was confused. She wrote in that journal as a form of therapy, so as not to unload her troubled thoughts on the family and compatriots with whom she shared such unenviable conditions. One of her best and most insightful lines must have come on a particularly difficult day. "Paper," she said, "has more patience than people." The science says it helps stop us from obsessing and ruminating so we can get back to the fun stuff. I tried a number of different ways that are out there for journaling, and I think this is the simplest. It's 5 questions you answer to get your mind in the right place when you put pen to paper. Start first thing in the morning with asking what you are grateful for. One of the greatest gifts of being human is the ability to choose what to focus on. If you're perfectly calm and still on the inside, you can handle anything. For those of us without Zen training, the best way you can begin your day is through gratitude. Quite simply, gratitude is the experience of counting one's blessings. A 2003 study found that keeping a daily gratitude journal leads to better sleep, reductions of physical pain, a greater sense of well-being, and a better ability to handle change. No matter where you are and what your situation is, your focus can be shifted to something positive. Being grateful immediately forces me into a positive mindset for the day, which is so nice. The next is, what would make today great? Have you ever realized how noisy a room was after the air conditioning was turned off, but you didn't realize it was there when it was on? There is a small part of your brainstem called the reticular activating system that turns on and off your perception of ideas and thoughts and determines the filters and lenses which you look at the world through. Have you ever learned a fact or seen a movie and suddenly noticed references to it throughout the day? Everywhere you go, your RAS will gently remind you of this change by pointing those out. The most enjoyable part of an activity is often the anticipation. When you write, "What would make today great?" you're taking a step to influence your RAS to point out and engage in activities that would make your day better. You're building new pathways in your brain that allow you to see what you can do to improve your well-being every day. You're creating a new program in your mind that naturally learns to improve your happiness. Doing this consistently gives you consistently better days. It's that simple. One study found that people who simply thought about watching their favorite movie actually increased their endorphin levels. Endorphins are the chemicals your brain produces to make you feel happiness and well-being, by 27%. A daily affirmation is a simple statement that defines you as you want to be. Every time you write the daily affirmation, you prime your brain to start building this belief in your mind. With consistency, you will begin to create that change from within. Yale University performed an experiment to study the effect of brain priming on the state of 7 different hotels. Half of the participants were informed about how much exercise they were getting every day through their work, how many calories they burned, how similar vacuuming is to a workout, etc. The other half were given no such information. Several weeks later, it was found that the first group, who had been primed to think of their work as exercise, had actually lost weight. Incredibly, these individuals had not done any more work or exercised any more than the control group, who were their colleagues who had not been informed about how their work was similar to a workout. Hence the operative question: how can you prime your brain to cash in on this? Affirmations put you in the driver's seat of your mind and flood it with positive information. These are statements that you can repeat again and again until they become a self-fulfilling prophecy, such as, I am confident and comfortable in my own skin. Of course, you have to do the work too, but affirmations give you that extra mental push. For the night routine questions, you talk about 3 amazing things that happened today. Possibly the best moment in the day is allowing yourself to take inventory of all the positive moments, big and small. The amazing 3 is your personal collection of the expected and unexpected bounty of wonderful things that you experienced in a day. The important thing to understand here is that amazing does not necessarily mean buying your dream house or finding your life partner. It can also mean that the stoplight turned green at just the right time, or the barista flashed you a wonderful smile. If you truly look at it, you will find amazing moments in your day. Sometimes an amazing moment can be avoiding a problem or conflict. That too is a success. The things could have been a whole lot worse scenario. When you write the amazing 3, you count your blessings in the day, in reverse. This has the effect of allowing you to prime your brain in reverse and can change not just your relationships with your loved ones, it can change your relationship with yourself. And finally, 5, how could I have made today even better? In movies ranging from Back to the Future to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the yearning to go back in time and change something is universal. Let's milk this concept. Think of this as an imagination exercise where you get the chance to go back in time and change one thing you did during the day. It could be saying or not saying something to someone. It could be waking up earlier. It could be trusting your gut with a decision. The question is your personal reminder that you have the power to change your perception of the past and influence the future. In a very real way, you shape your future in just the same way pro-level athletes and NASA astronauts do. The technology is available to you. It's the magic between your ears. In time, this exercise can begin to shift how you look at problems and help you automatically take the actions you want to take. It helps you to clarify your feelings. Sometimes my days have been so good, I've answered absolutely nothing. Other times I've needed more space to write down what disappointed me and how to get it off my mind. This is a big deal. Write hard and clear about what hurts, is what Ernest Hemingway said. Good news is that even the worst days only have 24 hours, so I try to be as specific as I can to identify exactly how I feel and why. The process of writing it down does help me clarify my feelings. Much of what I've said here has been plagiarized from the internet on the 5-Minute Journal. So this is step 2, think differently for happiness. We kind of covered it. Step 3, get happy through others. These are all basically just showing you what was in the Girl Scout troop discussion. So I think, your Scouts handout talks about pay it forward, where people who found change in payphones ended up being nicer and helpful to others than people who didn't find coins. I actually learned about pay it forward from a really cool movie in 2000 about a kid who creates a pyramid scheme to make the world better. The simplest way to define pay it forward is that when someone does something for you, instead of paying that person back directly, you pass it on to another person instead. One of the easiest examples of this is buying a coffee for the person in line behind you at the coffee shop, and then they buy a coffee for the person behind them, and so on. Mark Twain said the best way to cheer yourself is to try and cheer somebody else up. Ultimately, I think we're talking about kindness here, where you do something nice for someone else without expecting anything in return. Grown-ups deal with transactional people so much that they kind of get shocked when someone is kind to them without expectation of something in return. Let's delve into the science of kindness. Kindness produces oxytocin, the love hormone within us. This improves health. It improves energy, happiness, leads to a longer life, and actually creates the same changes in the brain that you would feel if you were the one receiving the kindness. This is called a helper's high. It increases serotonin, the happiness neurotransmitter we spoke of before, decreases pain, stress, anxiety, and depression. All of these have been scientifically proven. So there you have it. We've covered all the badge requirements. And I think the requirements are to make yourself happier, think differently for happiness, get happy through others, do a helpful happiness experiment, and create a happiness action plan. That's all stuff that I asked them to do on their own. And we talked about, what habits or rituals the science reveals for happiness. Well, exercise. The research coming out on physical exercise is mind-boggling. Not just for physical health, we know that, but also for mental health. It's as powerful as our most powerful psychiatric medication without any of the side effects. When it comes to dealing with anxiety or depression or attention deficit disorder, really more and more psychologists are calling physical exercise the wonder drug. We don't need to do a lot of it. Even as little as 3 30-minute sessions a week of running or brisk walking can help. Number 2, spending time with friends. The number one predictor of happiness is quality time we spend with people we care about and who care about us. Unfortunately, 1,000 friends on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook are no substitute for that one BFF. We need that real intimate connection. Number 3, express gratitude. Say thanks. Send thank you texts and emails. Don't take things for granted that you're very lucky to have. Just expressing gratitude to ourselves, being grateful for what we have, that's vital. And meditate. No, you don't have to sit on a mountaintop and say a mantra. 5 minutes a day of just closing your eyes and breathing deeply or listening to your favorite music with your eyes closed, that can go a long way toward making you happier. And so after that, we had a nice meal. I hope you enjoy.